Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk. My name is Laughingboy and I'm here again with...
Hi, I'm MasaeAnela.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing in my head. So, on the last episode, we finished talking about actually the history of MasaeAnela's channel and then kind of went into Twitch streaming and sort of the ins and out of that. On today's episode, we are going to start on just how to Let's Play. So basically, like, popular, more, and really experienced Let's Players can often inspire others to become a creator as well, but especially at the time when I wrote these in my notes, there really isn't that much decent information for people that want to start out on their own. And so kind of what I wanted to do here with this section, as soon as I can talk, I just want to try and get as much information out as we can so that we can just really try to inspire those to kickstart their own channels.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So, you know, let's go with this baby steps theme. How do you decide what the next game will be for your channel?
I roll some dice. Okay.
Do you get those on Etsy or?
I mean, no, you just have some dice lying around from board games and whatnot. You can just use those. Write some games on each side.
Only up to 12.
But no, seriously. Honestly, I don't really have a systematic way of deciding what the next game is going to be. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier on in another episode somewhere, but I basically just go with what feels right in the moment. I change my mind a lot. I'm just like, oh, I don't feel like playing that right now. I'm gonna change my mind and do this one. So, but some of the things that I do look at when I'm deciding on a game to play is whether or not I've played a similar game or something from the same series recently. So if I've played a Mario game within like the past 2 months, then I might be a little inclined to go with something else, either an RPG or a puzzle game or whatever. Just something that's not quite in the same vein, just to keep the variety going and rolling, and so that it doesn't get stale after a while.
So we'll eventually see another Katamari LP sometime in our future. Okay.
One of these days, maybe.
So do outside forces, maybe like fan comments or in particular other Let's Players, can they often influence the types of games that you play?
I mean, yes and no. Personally, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, so I just kind of roll with whatever feels good. But I always do look at what people want to see, and I take it into account. If I see a lot of people saying, "I want to see Tales Symphonia," you know, that happened eventually. It took me years, but people kept saying, like, I would love to see this, and I was like, you know what, I'll just keep that on the back burner. It keeps it in my mind, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's something that I should look into eventually when I actually feel like playing this game. Other people in the way of, like, Let's Players, in the way of courtesy, I do try to not start the same game as my friends at the same time. I try not to. Sometimes that doesn't work out. There was once when Stephen and Mel from StephenPlays started a Pikmin LP on the same day as me with the exact same first episode title, and it was nuts. I was kind of mad. Not at them, but just at the chances. I was like, well, that sucks. So yeah,
I'm sure it all worked out.
Yeah, it did. It did. It was kind of weird because our two projects got compared a lot as we were going along, but it was kind of interesting at the same time because we have very different play styles. So it was interesting. Yeah.
Now, and in terms of a brand new series, how do you prepare for that?
Oh, it depends on the series. I feel like I say that a lot, but it really does. It's a very case-by-case basis for a lot of the things that I do. But the core things that I prepare for almost every series are the graphics, and the pre-editing and making sure that everything looks good, sounds good, everything isn't stuttering or anything. Just making sure that I can get it to look as good as I can before I start pouring myself into actually creating the episodes.
Okay. And so at what point during a current series would you usually start preparing for the next one?
During?
So I guess that answers that question.
Okay. I'm trying to be better about that. Usually it's a lot easier if it's kind of a less intense series where I can actually dedicate a part of my day to preparing for a future series. Usually about the halfway point when I'm starting to feel the game wind down, then that's when I start thinking like, well, crap, I don't have my next game lined up. What do I do? And so from there, I kind of go with it and I start planning it out and I start making the ideas for really big games that I play, like Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, Tales of Symphonia, really detailed things like that. I'll start routing it out way beforehand. Like, that's done a long time in advance. And then I start fiddling with the graphics and stuff towards the end of when the previous series ends.
Okay. And so I've seen a couple of times on your channel that you'll have, older games. And when I say older games, let's talk like pre-GameCube era, like 480 resolution
right,
at
those
best.
good old days.
The good old days. So when picking those games, do you take advantage of emulators, virtual console, or other similar devices and services, or would you prefer to try and go with the original version?
In general, what I try to do is go with the version that has the most benefits to it. I don't really mess with emulators. That's not really my thing, but in the way of virtual consoles and remakes and things of that nature, I tend to look at the various different perks that they all have, and sometimes they're very 50-50, and I have a hard time deciding on which version to take, because sometimes the original just has certain perks that the remakes don't have, or maybe certain remakes have this DLC that other versions don't have. It's a whole big mess like that, and it's another very case by case. One example that I can think of off the top of my head is Tales of Symphonia, because it originally came out on the GameCube, of course, and
right.
it looks kind of wonky because it's the GameCube. But since then, we have gotten ports to Steam, to PS3, and stuff like that. So when I was looking between the two, the GameCube version, even though it was technologically like inferior, it doesn't have HD graphics or whatever, it still did have 60 frames per second. Some of the functionalities were different, and it's one of those things where you have to weigh, is it worth it to go for the really crisp looking, or go for something that's a little bit less so, but is more faithful to what it was that people remember.
So I have kind of like an extra question on that, because you kind of raise a good point in terms of remakes and ports. Where do you usually go to get that kind of information in terms of, I guess, picking between either the original copy or a remake? How do you usually go about doing that research?
I look everywhere. I go to as many sources as I can find. I'll go to like this gaming website. I'll compare videos that already exist on YouTube. I'll be like, does this look better or does this look better? Is this rumor true or is this rumor true? And so I'll generally just look for as many points that I can from many different places. And sometimes I'll even like go into it myself and test things and capture footage between one and the other. Like I booted up the GameCube version. I was like, oh, does this work this way or does this work this way? It's a lot of that. Sometimes it just comes down to my own finicky testing and things like that.
So we're gonna move on into, I guess, different styles of Let's Play.
Okay.
The term kind of encompasses a lot of different types of, I guess, thinking. Some people sort of prefer to show the entirety of a game in a walkthrough style, whereas others play through the game without getting 100% or might even prefer to play it blind. So for walkthrough styles, a lot of research can go into creating that, not necessarily like a traditional style, but definitely that walkthrough style.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine you probably take notes for a walkthrough series, do you?
Absolutely. My memory isn't that good.
Right. Now, how are those notes taken? Are they on paper or computer?
My notes are on computer more often than not. If there's something more visual, then I will kind of draw diagrams to myself once in a while. That's not as terribly often, but generally it's just on a good old WordPad.
And do you have any like good walkthrough sites or wikis you would recommend, or is just GameFAQs the way to go?
I usually go to GameFAQs to double check a lot of things. Wikis are cool, and it's great to poke around and see what people are saying. But it's funny that this is coming up now, because I actually just had something happen in that light where there was a lot of miscommunication and misinformation about how the Oceanside Spider House and Majora's Mask worked. And I was really confused, so I looked at a bunch of different sources, and everyone was saying different things. So I was kind of like, I don't know which one to believe, but okay. So you can't always trust wikis as much as I wish that I could. There's been a bunch of times where I've taken a little snippet and I'm like, yes, okay, now I know how this thing works. And then turns out it's completely different, or it left out a lot of holes and a lot of like little technicalities. So the best way to go about it is to test for yourself, make sure that you know on your own how things work, what order to do things in, and just make sure that it runs smoothly by first-hand experience.
Right, and so playtesting,
Yes.
which we will actually get to in a second. But before that, so while you're recording, do you tend to keep your notes like readily available?
Yes, but they don't really do.
All right, next question.
Yes, but they don't really do me much good because it's hard to watch the game and read the notes at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I try to make the notes very simplistic, so it's like, go into door.
Just peer.
Yeah, if I get stuck and I'm like, wait, what am I doing right now? And then I'll see in the corner of my eye like door in big red letters, and I'm like, okay, I know where I'm going.
Good, the red door.
Yes.
Yeah. So how many times have you played a game before choosing it as a Let's Play, and do you tend to replay it often while doing preparations?
Also depends. I feel like that's my answer for everything, but I do a lot of different types of videos, so it's like I don't have one specific way of doing things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of take note that especially on your channel, there are some Let's Players that tend to go one way, and they just do like RPGs or slow-paced games. And so usually doing things the same way might work for them. But I know in your case specifically, like, you do RPGs, also you do platformers, also you do adventure games, also you do that.
Also, I roll things up with balls.
Once, you did that once.
Twice. 3 times. I did that
three times?
Yes.
Wait. Hold on a fucking second. You did that 3 times?
I did that 3 times.
All right. Not a true fan, I guess.
Shame on you. How dare you?
I know. But, so maybe you can do it a 4th time. But, yeah, so I think it's important to kind of take note that, especially in your case, and certainly some others, that there are going to be different ways to do certain things. So yeah, it definitely will depend. Going back to the question though.
Oh, yeah. Typically, unless I'm doing something blind, then I've at least played through most of a game at least once. I say most because sometimes I'll leave the end and I'll actually go back and experience it for the first time on camera. I did that with Vesperia, I think. I played up to the final dungeon, and then I blew through that in the videos pretty much blind at that point, and I was just like going through an emotional roller coaster the entire way through. So
that was actually blind for you?
Yeah, the last part of Vesperia was blind.
Wow.
Other than that, some series, like the Zelda series, I've played through these games multiple times, more times than I can count, and I pretty much know them really well, but I'll still play through it once to route it out and make sure that everything works, and then I'm brushed up on what actually happens.
I guess going back to this topic of different types of games that you play on your channel, obviously games can either be slow or fast-paced, which can make it either easier or more difficult to do the walkthrough style commentary. So thinking about like trying to play a game like Mega Man or Sonic where things kind of are quick and you have to be ready for everything, versus just any kind of JRPG. Now, do you have any tips for doing a walkthrough style commentary on those faster paced games?
Good luck.
Man.
Okay, I don't really have a lot of advice in the way of a game in the vein of Sonic, because I wasn't really a Sonic kid, but thinking about platformers and things of that nature, fast-paced in that sense, walkthrough style for me is a little bit difficult because I have so many, my mouth is shooting off in all different directions, so I'm just like, I want to react to everything, but I also have to think. That doesn't jive for me a lot of the times. So
no, it's a difficult thing.
Yeah, what I can definitely say is if you are specifically shooting for a walkthrough style for a fast-paced platformer or whatever, maybe run through it once so that you know what to expect going into it and how quickly you're actually going to get to each point. A couple of notes here and there, maybe take a note from mine, take a note, and just have like big bold letters of like specific spots where notable things happen where you want to explain something. Other than that, all I can say is talk fast.
Just practice.
Yeah.
So, as we've stated before, there are many types of Let's Plays, and some where the player simply goes through the game, usually not showing 100% or without really giving a step-by-step guide on how to play the game. And sometimes they play a game they've never played before. They play it blind. Do you do any preparation at all when doing those types of Let's Plays?
There's less than when I actually want to sound like I know what I'm doing. But there are some prep work that I go through, because usually when I do playthrough style series, it's when I do blind playthroughs and when I'm experiencing something for the first time. Before, way long ago, I used to do regular playthroughs where I knew the game, but I wasn't actually gonna like conquer much or do everything. Like my original Zelda games and Vesperia for that matter, or things in that vein back then. But when I do a regular playthrough or a blind playthrough, I typically ask some people that I know that would be more knowledgeable about the game, and I'm like, what should I expect? What rewards do I get for getting all of the collectibles? Is it worth it to get? If it's not, I kind of make a judgment about which collectibles I'm actually going to try and go for, if they're major enough. And if they're not, then I still try to point out where they are. and be like, this thing is here if you're actually going for 100%.
I'm not going to do it, but...
But if you want to, you can. I pretty much did that in Donkey Kong. I did that for the puzzle pieces, and it worked out okay. Because I wasn't about to play through those levels like a billion times just to get the puzzle pieces.
I mean, it's easier on the 3DS, I'll tell you that much.
Fair enough.
So... do there tend to be sort of other topics that you might discuss when you're kind of going through a game blind? Like, what do you try to focus on in terms of your commentary?
Usually in terms of commentary, I go for just reaction-based. I just let my mouth run and I say what I think about whatever I'm seeing. I'll be like, oh, that shiny is pretty. Oh, this is really hard. Wow, this sucks. Just things in that vein. I don't put too much thought into it if I'm not outright going to like tell people how to do things. I just put out my experiences, my thoughts, what I feel like is going on in the current moment, and I just let it run. Fly away.
Go, mouth, go.
Goodbye. It was nice knowing you.
Oh. Do you feel like it's easier to do that sort of playthrough / blind style over a walkthrough?
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
For me, it's so it's actually kind of funny because I know people who work better when they know what to do and they know what topics they're going to touch on, and I give them so much credit. But for me, I work a lot better when I'm winging it and I'm doing improv and I can just spew out whatever about what I'm seeing, whereas I had to do a little bit more learning and a little bit more experimentation on the pacing when it comes to actually doing walkthrough style things. Because I still like to do a mix of reaction-based things and like being like, this is how you do this. But it's a lot of experimenting because you're progressing through the game, even in RPGs that are more slow-paced. It's a very real possibility to still be talking about this thing that you're taking care of and suddenly stumble on something else that you want to talk about, and then you kind of get confused and it's like, do I keep talking or do I interrupt myself now? And I do struggle occasionally with figuring out what I'm actually wanting to talk about in walkthroughs, but I try.
Yeah. No problem. And I think you do pretty good at it. I'd like to think.
Thank you.
Now, do you feel that there are advantages or disadvantages between that style of a blind Let's Play and a walkthrough? I think we kind of touched on this, but... Oh, yeah.
One is definitely going to be more fun for you than the other. For me, I have a blast doing blind games because I can just go nuts and do whatever I want. I'm just like, yeah, I don't have to worry about impressing anyone because everyone's here to see me fail anyway, so why not? But
and it knocks out that backlog.
Yes, exactly. That's another really great thing is that I can play games and not feel like I'm wasting my time.
Yeah, there you go.
But other than that, they both have their upsides and downsides. It's one of those things where it just comes down to personal preference.
Okay. And would you consider that sort of more entertaining aspect of the blind LP an important part, or do you rather think that the educational nature of doing a walkthrough and obtaining 100% completion is a more important aspect of doing Let's Plays?
I honestly don't think one is more important than the other inherently.
Okay.
It is all down to personal preference, not just on the side of the creator, but also for the viewer. Some people just really love seeing people do dumb things on camera, and that's fine. And other people want to learn more about the games that they already love. It pretty much just boils down to what is it that you want to put out there. It's not, I don't really think that there's anything inherently better one way or the other.
Now, I guess, again, we've sort of touched on this, but do you find it difficult to continue talking through a game you don't know?
Nah. I just talk forever. It's whatever. I can talk about how my room smells funny. I'll be like, this banana on this tree looks great. That reminds me, my room smells funny. Absolutely no connection there at all. It just that's how my mind connects dots and I find new topics to talk about.
That's called improvisation.
Yes.
So was this sort of an acquired skill, or is this just something that comes naturally to you?
Definitely acquired. Absolutely acquired. I think I've said this before, but I used to not talk very much in general. When I played games, I never said anything. When I was growing up, it very much kind of evolved from when I started making YouTube videos, and I was like, okay, I'll try to get out of my comfort zone and talk about what I'm doing. And that in itself was super challenging for me, and I had no idea what I was doing or how to even like progress or how to make it worth watching. But it just took time. It took time in finding my swing in things and figuring out how I enjoyed making the videos.
Okay. So I think that is good for today's episode.
Yeah.
Ran a little long, but I think we've hit a good stopping point. On the next episode, we will talk about actually recording, in the future, potentially editing.
The not fun stuff.
Exactly.
The boring stuff that no one wants to do.
No, but you gotta though, because you can't. Well, actually, you can now. You can just do it live. But whatever. We'll talk about it in the next episode. Good night, everybody.